And we're live.
Welcome back. Welcome back. So, here again with David, we're going to talk today about the language of Gen AI, right? And hopefully, you have all heard what prompting is. Back in the day, I remember how I had to learn with Google, right? Google search, doing the minus and the plus and put this in quotes and stuff like this. You learn how to get proper search criteria when using Google. Well, prompting is just version 2 of that, right? How can you ask a question that you're going to get an answer or more likely to get a correct answer? And that's what we're here talking today. Again, the basics here are understanding how to send a question to a large language model. That's what prompting is. And the better that you can ask the question, the more likely you'll get the proper result. So this is a skill that unfortunately is not something can be learned by osmosis. You have to do it. It's a practical skill, just like when you had to learn how to use Google search correctly. And things are changing. For the most part, prompting will work plus or minus, on all the large language models, the same kind of way. But we want to start here just at the beginning, get you started on your journey. By no means does this mean that, once you have started, that's it. It takes months and months and months of getting in there and learning things. So we're just going to talk at the fundamentals, what a prompt is, how to define it, setting the context of a conversation. Now, many people will see this as what's called conversational AI, which is almost the same thing. So if you had no skills on prompting, it would be called having a conversation with an AI. So don't be too hung up on the terms we use. Understanding what you put in and what you get out and what that outcome is, right? How to refine what you're using. And there are certain questions that you ask that are going to have guardrails. And one of those is very common is ethical things. Like, hey, how do I do an illegal act? It will tell you it's an illegal act and you can't do that. Or I'm asking a medical advice question. A lot of times there's liability guardrails put in place. So understanding what those are. Now, creating the effective prompt is really what the goal of what this first piece is going to be. David, I'm sure you'll walk us through in intimate detail a lot of these different pieces. So why don't you start today by just with the fundamentals?
Sure. And I'm going to fiddle with the screen to see if I can get in a large version of this for everybody. So that looks pretty good. That looks even better. We'll go with that. Hopefully we don't block anything. I'll try to monitor the slide and where we're at and what's going on here. All right. So
before you start,
yeah,
all the comments are open, everybody. So if you have a specific question on prompting that you've always wanted to ask an expert, now's the time. We'd be happy to answer them. Go ahead.
No, great point. And I did need to change this because our blocks are going to block some key parts of my slide here that I really, really need everybody to understand. These are like the 5 core pieces. So everything is about context. What context means is, let me just give you an example. If I came up to you, I says, would you give me that over there? And you're going to look at me, okay. And maybe I didn't even point. Maybe I just said, get me that over there. Like that could be anything within 360 degrees. There's no context. Like, get what? Oh, where? Like, what are you talking about? And so it's the same thing with generative AI. You've got to provide the basics of, and here they are. Who, what, where, why, and when. Okay. Everybody's heard of these before, but these are context things. And, humans are really good at determining inference, sentiment. This is where large language models have really started to accelerate, and it's really taking that next step towards AGI. However, if you write prompts in a very loose way without using lots of good context, you're going to get varying results because maybe it'll understand what you're talking about, maybe not. And so I'll give you a couple examples. And so this one is, write a short story about a young detective solving a mysterious crime in a small town. So you've got lots of things going on. Write a short story. That's kind of like the what. The who is the young detective. The what are they doing again? They're solving a mysterious crime, and where it's in a small coastal town. So we've pretty much hit 3 to 4 of these in this small and simple prompt, but these are just examples of that. And here are even more examples of that. I don't want to sit here and read to you. Literally, we'll need 2 hours to go through each and every one of these one by one. But, as you understand what I'm trying to go through and show, all of this just layers and builds on top of everything else. So with this understanding, I'm going to go to the next slide, and you're going to see where this is still going to be used, but I'm going to change it up ever so slightly as we go from slide to slide, giving you just a little bit more to think about, giving you just a little bit more to chew on, and taking all of this information so that you can take everything to the next level. So in this example, we want to potentially control output length. This would be helpful if you're trying to put something on X, formerly Twitter. I don't know why everybody keeps saying it. Now I'm saying it. And in any event, you only have so much text that you can use. And so here's some examples of that. Some of you that are texting like madmen and you understand what all these little hashtag things are. There's this TLDR. And what this means is too long didn't read. And if you provide that in context to a large language model, it understands. It's just like saying, give me a summary of blah, 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 blah. And that would be whatever maybe you paste in or whatever you type in. Okay, so that's all that means. It's just like a hashtag shortcut. So here are, and I've highlighted some of these over the next couple of slides to really kind of zero in on what we're trying to do. Write a concise summary. Like that is the part of this prompt that is going to help you control it. Keeping it no more than 4 sentences is another way. And you can see one's in the beginning of the prompt, one's at the end of the prompt. Now we're talking about a character count. Okay, so these are different iterations of essentially the same thing, the goal, controlling the output and the output length. Okay, so again, everything from before, the who, what, where, why, when, and then adding on, do you need to control the output? If you do, then employ different strategies like this in your prompt and you'll get a better output. Okay, the next one. This is where Sean was mentioning earlier about ethical considerations, but I'm giving you 2 for 1 in this particular walk away or message constructing prompt thing here. And that is combining ethical with refinement and or even iteration. And so here's an example of a normal prompt stacked on with both an ethical consideration and as you write and short a short story, implores the ethical dilemmas and consequences of such technology. And then we're stacking on that another layer about refinement. And I'm specifically telling it, I want you to iterate on this story, and I want you to highlight the potential dangers and ethical consideration. And all of that is framed around the initial thing, the who, what, where, why, when. Generate a short story, again, short. So that's stacking on the last slide. Okay, so you can, hopefully you're starting to see all this come together, okay? And so here's some more examples of that as well, where I've added refinement and ethical consideration. So otherwise, the prompt is super, super short. And I see a lot of people, not wanting to focus in on prompt engineering classes or courses. Are like, I know how to talk to AI. But yes, they only include maybe the parts that aren't highlighted. And so they're still having to ask the same question multiple times in different ways. I'm a firm believer in do something right the first time and not have to do it 20,000 times. So taking a course like this and other courses that's out there, as well as other workshops, are super helpful to helping you get the most out of what it is that you're trying to do more with less, and then also be able to use generative AI in that. So in this area we're going to talk about in the second area about techniques and crafting effective prompts. Sean, do you want to add anything about that and maybe frame some business context around kind of what I've just talked about and what you've seen and what your experience is?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's framing a conversation, a lot of people get really, really specific on this. You just got to think you're having a conversation with an AI. So you want to be very specific in what you're looking for, and you have to be specific of how you want the return. So I think David put it really well here, guys. First and foremost, what do you want? Number two, what are you expecting? And really get that first piece. And again, if you're expecting it to be one prompt and done, that's not how prompt engineering works. You may do 10, 15, 20 to get that effective prompt that you're doing. And then you're probably going to have to test it across many, 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 many different questions to be able to get an understanding of whether that prompt is effective if you're using it in a programmatic way.
Yep. Well said. All right. All right. Next gem for you guys. Hopefully you guys are getting some value out of this. This is going to be techniques for crafting effective prompts. All right. In this area, what I want to do is I want to highlight formulating a clear and specific prompt. And for the most part, we write things that we think they're clear because we understand them from a human perspective. However, AI kind of needs still a little prompting, a little guidance. It's getting better. These large language models are most definitely getting better, but it never hurts to be as clear and as specific as possible so that you can get the most out of it. And it would be the same thing as a conversation with a human being. If you absolutely want to make sure that somebody gets it, you go take that extra effort. Here's an example of maybe a recipe, right? But we're using specific key parts to this to make sure that it's specific and clear. And so what I want from AI is not just, a recipe or maybe just some instructions about baking chocolate chip cookies or even how to make them. But I want to make sure that I get the output is equally as clear. I get step-by-step instructions to say what it is that I'm trying to do here. Okay, so that's one example. In this example, we're talking about composing a persuasive argument supporting an implementation of renewable energy sources. Anyway, I don't want to read. But in any event, you can also see we've used something extra. Include statistics. And so it's building on that. So it's not just saying, hey, I want this particular thing from you, but I also want this in addition, but it goes with what I just previously asked. So sometimes you get better results by stacking everything together in a prompt that are in a single prompt. I've also seen in use cases programmatically where this can go off the rails and separation of concerns is more appropriate. So just keep that in the back of your head. If you're programming, great. If you're just a business user and you're writing something or doing something and you have multiple steps, maybe let it answer it and then use that, verify whatever it came back with is whatever, and then continue that prompting conversation with maybe asking, okay, could you now give me some examples of policy recommendations after it's already asked? So just wanted to be clear myself and say that this is, an example that works well, but not in all use cases. So take this one example with a grain of salt. So here are some additional ones about recommending 5. Again, we had very specific and we had a limiter. We've also asking it to highlight unique activities, blah, blah, blah. And of course, we have some additional examples for you here as well. Hopefully this is starting to make more sense. It's more clear. And, if it's not, I know we're going through this quick. Normally, Sean and I would talk to folks. We would do workshops with folks. It would take much, much longer. We would have live one-on-one. We would take this. We would go into a full-blown lecture example like we're doing here. But in addition to that, then we would go and use AI and prompt it. And we would come back and compare the prompts. And everybody gets to see and learn and experience this for themselves and then ask questions. That's the key part. Just because you make an assumption, never does it always work perfectly when you go to try it for yourself. And then if you're alone with nobody to ask, you hear those crickets and you're like, what do I do now? But in any event, this is great information for you to get started. All right, here in this next example, I want to talk about consideration of the audience, maybe framing it with a particular tone, and might be even a purpose behind it as well. Here's the first example. We're asking it to write a friendly email. And then we're saying, I don't want you to write it like professional. Just use an informal tone like I'm talking to a friend or something, right? And then include personal anecdotes that make the email engaging and relatable. So you can see there's a lot of framing here that, maybe we want generative AI to automatic. Now, I don't suggest doing this, but this is an example. An email comes in and you have this as a prompt and it's going to reply. The reason that I don't personally think that's good is because I love human centricity. A human being should always be there to kind of have the guardrails. Did it answer the way that it's supposed to? You should have an approval process, but that's not the point of this particular workshop or what we're trying to show you today. But I do want to make the call out for responsible AI to make sure that you have guardrails in place. And considering, hey, let's just not turn this thing loose so we have a PR disaster potentially on our hands because our robot went ahead and represented our employees and said something, and maybe the end user doesn't know. But if you do this, disclaim it at the bottom. This response was generated by AI. We are, apology if something comes across defensive, and then give them a way to report whatever it is that was sent out that was bad. That way you have an opportunity to fix it. So anyway, sorry about going off on a rampage there. But nonetheless, here are more examples. I've stopped highlighting them now. So just to kind of have you see these examples live on screen, I'll pause here for just a moment to let you read those. And Sean, this is a great opportunity for you to add anything to what I just said so that folks can read the rest of those examples.
Yeah, I mean, we did get a comment asking about, where would which large language model services can you use these for? And really, this is beginner, this is basic. This should work everywhere. Gemini, ChatGPT, POE.com, Perplexity. I would say there's hundreds of them out there right now, everyone. So we're not trying to get into very detailed, like do this, do that. And, there's single shot, multi-shot, there's all kinds of terms. You used AGI before. That's the comment I wanted to make is, if you guys don't know what AGI is, that artificial general intelligence. That's the future. It's not here yet. This is more mathematics than digital God. All right. Okay. So again, you shouldn't be scared of doing this. Like I said, this is equivalent to learning how to Google search in the 90s.
True. Very true. All right. Now we have a new example for you, requesting specific elements or techniques. So here we go with the highlighting of the first example, and I'm just going to fast forward so that you all have a chance to read all of the items on screen. Hopefully I don't go to the next slide. I did. Okay. Anyway, we'll go back. So in this example, we want to request specific elements or techniques. And this one, we're saying incorporate elements of a mystery. Okay. So without it, just write a short story and ensure the plot twist at the end surprises the reader. That's not a lot of good who, what, where, why, and when, but by running this through, incorporating elements of a mystery, it allows the AI to be very creative. Now, if you're listening and you're a business person, you could also add to the prompt, be as creative as you need to be to complete this task. It's part of your instructions. If you're a programmer, there's a programmatic setting on a lot of these large language models. It's called temperature. Some large language models may call it something different, but it allows you to turn up the creativity or tone it down. It just depends on what you're asking it to do. If you want it to embellish, then crank up the creativity, and it's okay. But if you're writing a business email, You don't want that. You want it to maybe be slightly creative so that it doesn't get so boxed in that it can't move or wiggle at all. Give it a little bit of wiggle room, but not too much. So, for example, on a scale of 1 to 10, give it like maybe a 3, 4 max. But anything lower than 2, and you might get too tight. In my experience, 3, 4 seems to be something that's good for that. So hopefully that is helpful there for you on that example. Okay, so we're going to move on to the final piece here. This is about exploring different prompting strategies. Sean, anything else to add before I continue?
No. Again, no question. Again, anybody who have questions, please bring them up. We'd love to hear them.
Yep. No, sounds great. All right. In this example here, I want to talk about instruction-based contextual completion questions, multi-turn, these type of things. So this here is an instruction prompt. This one is a contextual prompt. And I'm going to load them all up here so that you can see the differences between them. So all of these are prompts, but this is kind of like the perspective slide that really helps you understand. Yes, they're all prompts, but they're different kinds or types of prompts. In the instruction prompt, we're telling it to do something. In the contextual prompt, it's simply just providing additional information with an expected outcome. The completion prompt is more along the lines of a task, in that we feed it enough information to give it some context, and we let just AI kind of run with it and try to figure out what's going to happen there. The other one is a question-based prompt. So if I ask a question, I'm looking for a particular answer framed around my particular question. Think of this as like consultancy. This is great. If you're a business user, or even a business owner, whether you're in operations or you're whatever, you can have these types of prompt questions with a generative AI, not to do what it says and not to give you a sanity check, but if anything, to help you think outside your box. We all are creatures of habit. We get stuck just doing the monotonous proverbial pulling the widget. We do what works. And unless we have time or the energy to go outside of our comfort zone, we typically don't do it that much. And generative AI is a low energy, low impact thing. Hey, it doesn't take much to just quickly consult the generative AI consultant to help you maybe think outside the box. I use it that way quite a bit personally for myself, and I find myself doing interesting solutions in ways that typically I might not have done, and then I add that into my general use case, and it becomes part of my library. And then finally, you've all seen this with ChatGPT. This is just a conversational multi-turn prompt. This is more for you, those of you out there that are geeky, like to program, like to do cool stuff, because you'll need to compile all of this conversational thread into the next iteration of whatever it is that you're doing to build the context to give the user an experience very much like ChatGPT or any of these chat-based applications. But again, just framing all of these here. Okay, we got some golden nuggets coming up here. I'm going to put into the chat bot what I call my magic prompt. I'm going to put this in here in just a moment. I forget which screen it's on, but before we get there, I want to talk about this particular slide. This is demonstrating the impact of prompt variation and responses. So in this one, we just give it some really terse instruction. Write me a poem about love. And you get this pretty much gentle, general response back out of it. Now we do a different variation. Instead of writing about love, write it about heartbreak. That's a little bit more emotional, and you're going to get, your mileage is going to get varied. But the point is, this is going to the point of tweak your existing prompts. Figure out the who, what, where, why, and when. Zero in on it. Do I need to control the output length? Do I need to add additional expectations to whatever your expectations are? Include that into your prompt. Tack that on to the next paragraph. It's not just writing a prompt to do whatever. It's also an instruction for what you expect to have to come out of it. So keep that in mind as you play and you do these variations. Here's your prompt variation on describe a sunny beach. And then this one is describe a haunted beach. And it kind of goes and shows the differences there. Now, there's something that is very, very important. You know, we're in a huge disruption time right now in history. And normally, when we did business the old-fashioned way, and even virtually online, like Sean and I are giving this presentation, many of you work from home, or you're working with customers not in the same area. Maybe they're in California, you're in New York, or whatever. And as a result of that, with the camera, you still get these three areas of the Moravian 73855 rule, which basically breaks it down to what you say doesn't matter as much as the tone and the inference. If I say, I don't know, you're crazy, that's one thing. I was very monotone, very relaxed. But if I go, you're crazy, and just go bananas, like I added a lot of body language to that, right? And so there's a lot of impact to that. And that's where 55% of that comes into. You lose a huge percentage of that when you're dealing with the AI. All it has is your 7% spoken, in this case, written. In some cases, if you saw our demo a couple of weeks ago on our AIA assistant, which is the interview assistant, it transcribed the voice. So in that case, it could be voice. But generally speaking, it's whatever goes into the machine, right? So we'll just assume that it's a prompt. And that is what you write is king. The context in which you give it is king. So this perspective of this 73855 goes out the window yesterday very quickly because AI doesn't work like this. And so you have to have a paradigm shift when you're talking to it to understand this. It doesn't matter inside your head, you're screaming and going, ah. It really comes down to, hey, what's coming out of my fingertips into the words, because that's like everything. This all is the context that the AI needs to do with whatever. All right, so I do believe we are coming towards the end here. I'm going to pause here so that you guys, if you're interested, want to reach out to Sean or I. These QR codes, if you scan them, take you directly to Sean and I's LinkedIn. From there, create a connection with us, reach out to us. We're happy to hold workshops. We're happy to go into this a little bit further with you if you so choose. I'm going to break out of this so I can get to this magical prompt that I have in the deck, and I'm going to paste this here into the chat window. Now, in addition to this, let's take this thing for a ride and let's see what this thing does. So here I am in Poe. Okay, I have Llama 3 7B Grok out here, which just means it's going to process it really fast. You don't have to select this. It already has one that comes out of the box immediately for you. But this magic prompt, let's just talk about what this thing does. And this is a prompt that is interesting because it helps you write better prompts. This is like worth its weight in gold if you've never used ChatGPT. I don't know why you wouldn't have, but if you haven't, this is something that is there to help you build a prompt. And so what it's going to do is it's going to walk you through, hey, what do you want to do? What do you want to know? So just copy and paste. You don't even have to dissect it. So just hit enter. Here we go. And then it says, hey, I'm thrilled to be your prompt engineer. Let's get started for step one. What would you like your prompt to be about? Now, because you're just starting off, everything you do, everything you say is probably going to be pretty terse, and that's fine. But, maybe be a little bit more descriptive, because the more you say, the more it will try to help you. But I'm just going to do something as basic. Let's just do something about cats. Like a one word, a one-liner. It's like, okay, but now it comes back and it helps guide you. Now look at the revised prompt. The prompt that you're going to use is generate information about domestic cats. Now it's helping you think outside the box. It's saying questions. What aspect of cats would you like to focus? And it gives you some examples: behavior, health, breeds, history. So it's kind of walking you and guiding you through. So let's just do health. And you can do this by just doing one, health, hitting a shift enter because I want to get to a new line and not necessarily send it. For two, I want to ask, I don't know, we'll just make it educational. And then number three, let's just stick with short answers, right? And so let's just do this 3 dot, and then we'll do that. Okay, so grab too much text here. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just going to hit enter. And so I gave it the information. Now look at the revised prompt right here. Provide short educational answers about common health issues. Anyway, so I can take this prompt. At some point, you can just say, I'm done. And now, of course, this has nothing to do with the prompt. This has to do with apparently the large language model and Poe getting too much information and it choked. Okay, here's the final prompt, and I got it right here. And now if I come up here and I create a new conversation with this robot, I just paste in that prompt. Now, it's a prompt to help you generate a prompt. That's why it's a magic prompt. And so now with this prompt, you can see the who, what, where, why, and when has all been there. And then now you've got some really great output. And this is something that shows the illustration of layer by layer, step by step. Generative AI's biggest value is in having it be inserted in your business workflow, your business processes at each intricate step. Too many people are getting so upset and frustrated with generative AI because it doesn't produce the outputs or the outcomes that they expect. And the reason is typically that we observe they're trying to boil the ocean and now they have a bad experience. They don't know that less is more in these use cases. And so this is a great example of it. Sean, you got anything to add about that?
No, I mean, one of my favorite things that I tell people that I like doing is I will create my own magic prompt. I'll go in there and I'll say, this is who I am. This is my family. This is my wife. This is my, my hobbies. Providing all that context and take that context and I put it in first so it understands who I am and what I'm trying to do. And that context is key. It can switch what kind of an expert it is. You had one example about travel itineraries. So, when I'm planning travel, I will put that in there and ask questions. Hey, I like doing this. I like doing that. Come up with 3 different 3-day itineraries for this location that me and my wife are going on vacation for. So there's a lot of power in this. But lastly, I want to point out that it's not perfect. So the large language models are not updated all the time, every day. So if I were to ask, who won the Super Bowl this year, most large language models would not be able to answer it correctly. Or if they did, they would confidently give you the wrong answer. So, this is a tool that should not be taken absolutely at face value with any kind of validation. That's to David's earlier point about automation. If you're planning on automating something, you better expect it to let you down 10, 15% of the time. That's what the statistics of all large language models for accuracy is in the mid-80s. So, you want to put a human in the loop if you want something better than 85% accuracy.
Yep. No, all great points. Well, with that, we are towards the end of our presentation today. I would highly encourage you guys to visit us online at transformationleaderspodcast.com. That's not us. I don't know what just happened. There we go. Must have had something else cached in there. There we are. That's us. And so in any event, join us online here. We've got links to become a guest on the show. We'd love to have you. And the sponsors are here at the bottom. You have a link that goes straight out to our YouTube channel. And of course, we have a group also on LinkedIn, so you can check us out there. And this is where we post various things, past shows, things of that nature. All of that information is available online for you. So that's it for this week. Every Wednesday, we'll see you here at 12 o'clock noon Eastern Standard Time.